Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton, Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Well, hello. Good morning, everybody. How are you? It is Monday, August 17th. I'm on the air. That's about all I can say for it right now. Am I ready for a show today? No different than most days, but I am not, in the sense that I'm not quite ready. But I don't know, mentally, I don't know if I'm prepared today. I'm going to lean on you guys heavily. Greg, be prepared. I have no idea what happened this weekend. I went away briefly, not far. I went on, I'll tell you what happened. My brother Mark had a delayed 50th birthday party. Terrific, right? So we went away and we played golf all weekend because he loves to go and play golf all weekend. So I do too. So we went. I like it, but I never go because I'm usually reading stories about what things we need to talk about on the radio, or just, puttering around the house. Taking care of the kids, driving them somewhere, I don't know, doing laundry, whatever. I just, who has time to go out and play golf for like 5 hours plus, right? So anyway, big weekend trip, because here we were going to go and play twice. And of course, physically, I'm just not up to it. But I want to go anyway. And so now I'm out of it mentally as a physical part of this hangover, I guess you could call it, from golf. And I am clueless as to what happened, because who wants to, read email and Twitter while you're out on the golf course enjoying a few minutes of outside time? Well, 10, 12 hours of outside time. So I'm disconnected to all this, and, you'll have to catch me up. I understand Donald Trump is running for president, apparently. That's a big deal. We'll catch up with that. He's still in the news. People still talking about all this stuff. I guess today's chatter is about the not surprising but still upsetting and shocking photo and tweet from Mark Halperin, who's just like the biggest political suck-up there is out there on the political journalism circles. He rode on Donald Trump's helicopter. Donald Trump and a couple other people went to the Iowa State Fair. I read you all those foods on a stick. It wasn't for no reason that we wasted that much time on it on Friday. It's Iowa State Fair season, and all the candidates have to go there and eat foods on a stick and try to select one that is recognizable as traditionally Iowan State Fair type food, but also it doesn't make you look too ridiculous eating it. A la corn dogs for Michelle and Marcus Bachmann, those couple of years ago, and everybody else in the world. Rick Perry did corn dogs. I guess that's the quintessential Iowa State Fair food. So you want to be maybe seen eating one of those. You just want to be photographed with it. You need to eat it under a cloak or something. I don't know. Anyway, of course, there were plenty of choices. I did manage to see through the filter Donald Trump eating it looked like a pork chop on a stick. That would be my choice too. I like the pork chops on a stick. I like them just plain. They make a nice barbecue pork chop at the State Fair. Virginia State Fair has a terrific one. And so I don't know. And I guess that one is acceptable to be photographed with. It's maybe recognizably Iowan enough. Anyway, he went to the State Fair and he made a big deal of going in his helicopter because he's a fabulously wealthy individual who has his own helicopter. Helicopters are a great thing at the State Fair, and very often in the Virginia State Fair, someone will bring a helicopter, not an attendee, but as a ride. You pay $25 and they'll take you up in the air and fly you around the State Fair so you can see what the State Fair looks like from above, which I guess is kind of a cool experience. It largely looks like what you'd think it would look like. Lots of people milling about and going on rides, including helicopter rides. Anyway, Donald Trump, I know a couple of weeks ago he said he was planning on going to the Iowa State Fair and was going to give voters rides on his helicopter. And I guess the Iowa State Fair said you couldn't do that, and I'm not sure whether that's just because you can't just take off and fly all over the place here at the Iowa State Fair, or if you want to give people rides, you got to register with us and pay some sort of fee, concession fee of some kind, or we already have a helicopter ride here and people are paying for it and the airspace is limited and we can't have your helicopter flying all over the place. I don't know. Anyway, he went, and in order to show that he was a man of the people instead of flying regular dirty people around, which is what you would have to do if you wanted to fly Iowa voters around. They're not all dirty, but I'm saying regular people are, to Donald Trump, are dirty, filthy, disgusting individuals. Except Mark Halperin writes for, I don't even know where the hell he writes, to be honest with you. I don't follow that stuff. I just know he's considered a jerk very widely. And a sycophant at that. So anyway, he got a ride on Trump's helicopter. I don't know whether he rode with him to the fair or met him at the fair. I don't know. Anyway, he tweeted a picture of himself happily enjoying the ride along with Trump, who's wearing his Make America Great hat again. And everybody's laughing at what a suck-up he appears to be. And gosh, it's true. So let's see. There was morning Pilates with Ann Romney and then helicopter rides with Donald Trump. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it makes a certain amount of sense. He's, I guess, a rich guy in his own right. Somebody pays him a tremendous amount of money to write positive stories about people who already are on the top of the polls, and what fabulous insight it is. Anyway, Greg, do you know anything about the helicopter ride?
He's Batman.
Oh, yeah, I saw the headline, and I said I better click on it, but I figured that'll probably start some video in the background. He thinks he's Batman.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know. He told one of the kids that.
Oh, well, so what does PolitiFact say?
He had a bunch of kids, and they wanted to see him, and he had them line up and wait for like 20 minutes in the blazing sun while he gave his speech. And they were yawning, uncomfortable, whatever, but, they wanted to see the helicopter. They wanted to talk to him. Mm-hmm. And, it's one of the two big Iowa events that happened over the weekend.
Yeah.
The other, of course, was the big Wingding dinner.
Wingding. All right.
Yeah, that was Hillary and Bernie and the others talking to Iowa Democratic activists, the people that actually show up at caucuses and stuff.
Yeah, right. Say.
It's interesting because we have some good people on the ground there. Iowa starting line in Des Moines Dem or at the Wingding dinner and at the at the fair. One of the you did mention the foods on a stick that you can get at the Iowa State Fair.
Yes.
And a lot of cities and towns, states will have a big fair like this.
Yeah.
At the Big E up in Massachusetts, and
I got to buy a stick.
Area we have the Bridgewater State Fair. They often raise money for local things like fire departments and stuff like that. Many of which in New England are volunteer. But they're fun to go to, and the food is great. And one of the things that got lost is that most of the people at the Iowa State Fair really weren't there for the politics at all. They were just there for the food.
Yes.
And one of the things that's a classic, of course, is the annual butter cow. They build a cow out of butter. It's life-size. And what I learned over the weekend is that the butter cow actually has its own official Twitter feed.
Does it? Well, everybody does now, I guess.
Well, I mentioned it. And, and after the fair, after Hillary spoke and was mobbed by people, and after Trump spoke and was mobbed by people, the best way to see these candidates is to go stand by the butter cow, stake out a position. It's in a refrigerated room so it doesn't melt. And
that's a good place to stand at any fair.
Well, you don't want the butter cow to go rancid. I don't know if you can get in there with the butter cow, but you go past the butter, look at it through the window.
I see.
In the big refrigerator room.
Like Lenin.
Yeah. And, if you stand near the butter cow, the candidates eventually will come to you.
Yeah, all right. That's a good idea.
So I tweeted after this was all over, it's a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day here in Connecticut. We went hiking on the Appalachian Trail yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could do that.
Actually, we walked on the ground with the trail through the woods. Okay.
To be fair, it's like 45 feet of a local trail intersects with the Appalachian Trail. So, you could say, okay, I was on it. But it's beautiful. It's still beautiful.
Fair enough, okay.
And so I tweeted, it's a beautiful day and, great day for a fair and, and a butter cow, what more could you want? And the butter cow answered me and said, I wake up every morning thinking that.
All right. The cow the cow's on it.
Exactly. So, that's Iowa and you got to go with it. And that's just what it is.
All right.
But the Wingding dinner.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Was the candidate speaking to the activists. Hillary did extraordinarily well. Great speech, fired up crowd. Right. Bernie came in second in that crowd. That's the second time. It's like Jefferson Jackson dinners. The activists in Iowa are leaning Hillary. Whereas you can't say that in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is like pretty evenly split at this point.
All right. Well, New Hampshire, next door, small, and same stock generally.
Yeah, the key thing there, though, is going to be who votes in which primary.
Yeah.
Did the Indies go to the Republicans or did they go to the Democrats? Because that's going to change how the outcome is.
If you're going to have I mean, I know we have a lot of complaints about these two particular states being first sometimes, but as a pairing goes, I like it a lot. And a lot of the reason I like it is because you can get pairings like this where you're not going to get just one candidate, you know, always rubber stamped by both. Two very different kinds of organizing, very different kinds of states, different kinds of voting.
Yeah, caucus versus, open primary.
Yeah.
And I am a big fan of not having these underrepresentative states, that really don't represent the Democratic Party. I'd rather we do it a different way.
Yeah, I mean, we don't.
I'm a big fan of Marcos's idea of 4 regional primaries and take turns going first. All that said, this is really fun. It's really fun watching Iowa. I live in a small town in Connecticut. It's really fun watching, Iowans do this at the state fair. I get what state fairs are. And it's really fun watching New Hampshire do this.
Yeah, I like both of the processes. If we're stuck with them, I like the way they do them. And it creates an opportunity to have something like, well, okay, the biggest, most organized candidate can carry the Iowa thing, but then maybe perhaps the retail politician can carry the New Hampshire thing. It's very interesting.
Anyway, back to my friend Iowa Starting Line, who was tweeting during the Wingding dinner as well as the fair to give you an idea of what Iowans activists are thinking about this, and adds a little bit of local perspective that really help in terms of interpreting all of this. For example, as I said, Hillary did very well at the Wingding dinner. So he writes, this was friendly turf for Clinton, having won many of the northern western Iowa counties in 2008 that largely made up the Wingding audience. So, it's a little slanted there. You wouldn't know that if you're not from Iowa. Still, she could have given the speech in front of a Bernie Sanders-only crowd and gotten a great reception. The speeches have quickly turned into one of her greatest strengths in the 2016 primary, and she hit another one out of the park with a forceful, enthusiastic speech. The first half of it was applause line after applause line, delivered in a booming voice with fun zingers coming nonstop. It was hard to keep up with the great new lines. There were simply too many. The best section was an extended riff on the gender card topic, pushing back against Republicans who claimed she was using it for political advantage. Talking about the importance of women in this country, for example. Clinton was so revved up, in fact, she blew her voice out halfway through her address. She coughed repeatedly for about a minute. For a moment, it was questionable if she'd be able to go on. Her voice loss ended up being so well-timed, as it was right as she transitioned to the serious part of the address, that Trey Gowdy could open up an investigation into whether it was a conspiracy. Her voice now gravelly and deep. She explained in an incredibly effective and new way about how Citizens United case was originally about her, about how an anti-Hillary movie set the path to the court decision that allowed the dark money now being used to attack her. Perhaps most amazingly, the frontrunner positioned herself as a scrappy underdog fighting off dirty attacks on the Republican machine. The email server issue was nothing more than the same old partisan game. Critics will likely decry her Snapchat line. Did you hear that?
No.
She said, I really am enjoying my new Snapchat account. It's a lot of fun, and the best part about it is that the posts disappear by themselves.
Okay.
Her first line opening up the speech, and the audience loved it, ate it up. Oh my God, she's making fun of this horrible thing that's going to put her in jail, said the Republicans. Yeah, well, whatever. It went a long way toward girding Democrats against current and future criticism. Still have to defend her on if she's the nominee. And then a nice piece about Bernie. Bernie Sanders took the stage to loud and raucous applause, most of his supporters apparently standing in the wings of the room. Typical Sanders stump speech, heavily focused on economic inequality, delivered with intense energy from start to finish. Didn't seem at the top of his game that night, but still brought the Democrats in the room to their feet several times. The outsider candidate has demonstrated time and again he's playing by his own rules in this primary, but you can't help but wonder if he's missing some opportunities. He shouted his entire speech into the microphone. I heard that. The thing is, you could go online and find these things, and you can actually hear them live if you wanted to. And when Bernie came on, it was like, 10 points louder volume than when Hillary was on. And I was doing something else, all of a sudden, it's like, why is Bernie yelling at me? What did I do? but he toned it down. It was a good speech.
Okay. Well, yeah, and sometimes that's just speaking style, or literally how close your face is to the mic.
To the microphone.
How you stand. Okay.
Yeah, a little media training.
True, and I mean, it got Howard Dean in trouble once.
Right. So. As usual, he focused his entire address on policy minutia, which his backers will describe as a virtue, but sometimes voters want to know a little more about their future president personally. O'Malley did this well. Even though everyone knows Clinton's story, she does it well. So the suggestion here is Bernie tried to get that into his thing, too, because people do want to know a little bit more about it.
Yes, they do.
How come you got a Brooklyn accent, but you're from Vermont? Like, what's that all about?
Good question. I wonder if that's a little bit of a difference between New Hampshire and Vermont. Or no, New Hampshire and Iowa also. I mean, everybody, it's a good point. People want to know something personal about their candidate. And I wonder whether there's a lot more like, well, I'd like to get to know you and be friendly in Iowa, and a little bit more, tell me what you're going to do in New Hampshire.
Right. And then the other guys, I guess Webb wasn't there. But O'Malley did okay. It was a good speech, large number of Democratic caucus goers. He points out that Bernie and O'Malley basically did the stump speech, and Hillary did something a little different, which is one of the reasons why it was striking. And Link Chafee, this was the greatest Link Chafee speech I've ever seen him give. It still wasn't good, but it was a definite improvement over past performances.
Right. Was it?
That's the key thing to watch, he says. Did they get better over time?
I thought it was. I mean, that would also be the greatest Link Chafee speech I've ever seen, because
it would be the only Link Chafee speech you ever saw.
That's where he was going. All right.
But I appreciate that local analysis, and watching it on TV, you got the same impression as with other Iowa events. Bernie extremely well received. Clinton maybe a tad better received.
Okay.
But again, that's who goes. It's not a question of you get a different audience, you'll get a different response. But it is what it is. So that part was fun.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, it's summer, and these are the kind of things that are absolutely positively local summer events. So you got to take it as it comes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I like it sounds like a good report, and a good tip for people who do wonder, or when people say things are a little different in Iowa, or you got to do this or that, or you need to have an organization, seasoned Iowa operatives for Iowa, and same thing for New Hampshire.
Ruined.
And sometimes it's these little things that you find out. Like, for instance, if you hire the most experienced Iowa team, you might get this. On the other hand, if you've run in Iowa 3-4 times, you might also get this. Without the team, you might already have learned. But they may say to you, the thing about this wingding dinner is don't do the standard stump speech here. You can usually get away with that everywhere else. But here is a crowd that wants to get to know you personally. Let's throw them some anecdotes, be a little bit more entertaining, lighten it up a little bit. And it works.
Other things. And some of these are not necessarily like they don't make sense, but you have to do them anyway.
Yeah.
It's like going to Philadelphia and ordering a cheesesteak.
Right. That
don't
does
ask
not
for
make
Swiss.
sense.
Do not ask for Swiss cheese. You don't necessarily have to have it with or without Cheese Whiz, but don't ask for Swiss.
Right. You learn those things, and it's just little nuance to the campaign that you can get from either having talked to somebody who's been there a lot. Or
in Iowa, remember, this is an agricultural fair.
Yes.
Okay. Eat the pork on a stick.
Yeah, or eat something on a stick.
Don't throw it out. Eat it. If somebody asks you for it, you get it. And if you're going to get some, you stand on line like everybody else. You don't cut the line. I mean, these are the little things you need to do. And the funny thing, and you have to go visit the butter cow. You just have to.
Yeah, and that also does not make sense.
So it doesn't have to make sense. You just have to do it. And the funny thing is that Hillary avoided a lot of these mistakes at the Iowa State Fair, not just because she's been there before, but because Tom Harkin escorted her.
Yeah, and that's the importance of, the on-the-ground importance that day of the endorsement. Other than that, of course, everybody says, oh, Tom Harkin, I love that guy.
Right. Overheard in a crowd, for example, somebody saying, a Hillary aide saying, we're going to take you over there where you can sit for a while. And she said, I'm not sitting, we're walking. We're going to go see people. Of course, there were crowds and mobs and, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You never really got a chance to talk to her. But, it's the kind of thing, again, that you have to do. And, the good campaigners learn how to do it. But it's the difference between a Hillary or a Trump going to a place like the Iowa State Fair and drawing a mob, and let's say Rick Santorum, who's going to be very well received, but isn't going to be mobbed.
Yes. And Was it Fred Thompson who went in a golf cart?
Yes, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't do that.
Right.
It's like I'm too lazy. And so as soon as you get that, it's like, okay. And you can't stay for 10 minutes and then leave.
Right. It's got to be a day-long affair. All right. And do you know if the butter cow is in different poses or postures every year, or do they just make the same cow?
I only got a really super good picture of this year's, which is your basic cow standing there.
Yeah.
No fly. There are no butterflies, as far as I can tell.
No, that would make sense.
Right? No jokes about buttermilk. They do that all the time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know. It continues to be an important tradition, and there's a million ways to go wrong with it. And so it's a good test of the team you've put together if you can come out of the Iowa Fair gaff-free.
Iowa is about farming, and you're there to show off agricultural stuff.
Yes.
And you got to take it seriously and take them seriously, or they won't take you seriously.
I guess that's true. You can't make fun of
That's what the deal is. Right, exactly. So, you want to get serious? We can talk about Trump's immigration policy. He wants to deport everybody.
Okay, that's policy.
Yeah, he wants to keep families together. You all go.
Oh, well, all right.
He wants to build a wall, and
okay.
he thinks he put out a policy statement on this.
I heard that he did.
Here's what's in it. Okay, Mexican wall, he wants to build one, and if the country chooses not to, this story from Mashable, Trump believes the U.S. should impose financial penalties on Mexico, including increasing fees on all temporary visas issued to Mexican CEOs and diplomats, and cancel them if needed. Increase fees on all border crossing cards. So when you go through that tunnel under your wall, you have to have an increased fee on your border crossing card.
Okay.
Increase fees at ports of entry to the U.S. from Mexico, impose tariffs and foreign aid cuts on the country. He also wants to rescind, this is interesting, rescind the birthright citizenship. So if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen no matter where your parents are from. Well, he wants to get rid of
that. Sure. Because
just because the 14th Amendment to the Constitution says it.
Yes. Doesn't necessarily mean Trump says it.
Exactly, and he can get rid of it with the wave of his hand because he's Trump. He also wants to get rid of eliminating short-term visas for foreign students and limiting refugees in the U.S. Because give us your tired, you're poor, except if you speak Spanish.
Yeah. All right, well, now at least I begin to understand what he means by Mexico will pay for the wall. They won't say, oh, thanks for the wall, here's money.
He'll just charge him for everything else they do, right? Well, there's a 10% imposed tax on Mexican food.
That might work.
You know, his policy makes as much sense as that. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's a piece from Ezra Klein this morning, which I found fascinating, which is the Republican Party doesn't want to believe that the voters agree with Donald Trump, but they do. That is to say, Republican voters.
Yeah, all right.
Right? So the question that the pundits have been furiously trying to deal with, does Donald Trump's appeal have anything to do with his policy positions? Republican political consultant Matthew Dowd says it doesn't, and Matthew Dowd would be annoyed at that. He would point out, I'm an independent, I'm not a Republican. I was a Republican, I've broken with the party. Trump's rise, he argues, is all personality, no policy.
Okay.
That is, for Republicans, a more comforting interpretation of Trump's emergence. He's a candidate powered by a potent mix of celebrity outrage and chutzpah. But he's not really a Republican. As the primary grinds on, Republican voters will figure that out. He's not really a Republican the way Bernie Sanders isn't really a Democrat, which is to say they are.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, but we'll get to the technical part of that in a minute when we look at a birther story. But there's another possible interpretation, this one more worrying for Republicans, Ezra writes. In this interpretation, part of what makes Trump dangerous is that he's willing to cater to the opinions of the Republican base in ways the Republican establishment wouldn't dare. And in doing, he can exploit long-standing cleavages between the Republican Party and the voters it represents. And this is the whole thing about go right in the primary and then go center in the general. But the Republican base isn't going to let you go center in the general. And this is where Trump hurts the party. And this whole idea that Trump isn't really hurting the Republican brand is complete BS. Republicans, now Ezra writing, agree with Trump on immigration. He's going to deport unauthorized immigrants. He went through his policy. And he's known for one policy idea, immigration, particularly illegal immigration, which we would call undocumented immigration, is hurting American workers. And sure enough, a recent CBS News poll found that Trump leads the field when you ask Republican voters who they trust most on immigration. Not true in all policy issues. Trump badly lags Jeb Bush when you ask about dealing with Americans' foreign adversaries. But when it comes to immigration, Republican voters prefer him to the other candidates. Now, one of the things that I thought was fascinating about this, he cites it, and I sent you my very first link today that I sent you, is a Charles Franklin graphic, which puts together Fox polling. The Fox poll pre-debate and the Fox poll post-debate.
Okay.
To illustrate this point. And it's individual candidates and what's happened to them. So Trump went from 26 to 25, still leading the pack by double figures.
Okay.
Next closest guy is Carson at 12, who shot up from 7. So before the debate, it was Trump at 26, Bush 15, and Walker 9. After the debate, Trump 25, Carson 12, Cruz 10. In other words, Bush went from 15 to 9.
Yeah.
Walker went from 9 to 6.
Okay.
Okay, Carly Fiorina shot up from 2 to 5.
All right.
Rubio went from 5 to 4. Remember how everybody told you Rubio won the debate?
That was a weird thing, but yeah.
BS.
Yeah.
The insiders within the Beltway love Rubio. The voters want no part of him. Okay? And Walker and Bush, as I've been telling you for at least a week, if not longer, are terrible candidates, and they're not doing well at all. The people that did well is Trump, basically even, lost a point, and Carson and Cruz went up.
Okay.
So basically, if you take Trump, Carson, Cruz, you're talking about more than 50% of the electorate here wants nothing to do with Walker, Bush, and the establishment candidates.
Uh-oh. So
how do you win?
Yeah.
If you're Jeb Bush. I mean, you got a ton of money.
Yes, that's true. That's a big part of it.
So this pro-Bush super PAC is about to dump $10 million on TV campaigning in Iowa because they have the money. But guess what? It's not going to help him.
Well, I don't mind if they burn it, but yeah. Although, I don't know, I guess the other possibility, a lot of times whenever you see people talking about making a big TV buy, they end up cutting the ads and then not buying so much time, or at least not executing the contracts on that time, and instead trying to get all the political reporters to view it online and write it up as if they had spent $10 million on it.
Right. Well, they've done that, and that does happen all the time. But 2 points here. Number one, this time it looks like they're actually spending money on the air. And secondly, because it's the super PAC spending it, the Mike Murphy super PAC.
Oh, right, yes, super PAC.
They have to, it costs them a lot more to do the same thing that the candidates would do if they did it from their own campaign. Campaigns get discounts.
Yes, so
super PACs get charged a premium.
So a $10 million buy is not as big as a campaign $10 million
buy. Exactly. Okay. But still, they're spending a lot of money on it.
Yeah, money gets burnt. That's okay. I don't mind how they burn it. It's just so long they do.
So, pretty interesting. And, Donald Trump at the same time said, oh yeah, he's spending a lot of money because he has a lot of money. You know why he has a lot of money? A lot of people gave him a lot of money. What does it mean? He's a puppet.
Interesting.
He's a puppet for people who are paying money. You don't give this kind of, believe me, I know. I've been on the other side of this, Trump says. You don't give that kind of money without expecting access and favors.
Well, that's largely true.
Yes, but that's what the Republican establishment does not want their candidates saying.
Oh, whoops.
Here's another area where he agrees, and they agree, the Republican base completely agrees with Donald Trump, and it's unfortunate for the other people.
Yeah, I guess. Well, this was a long time coming, and I guess it took Trump to make the issue as crystalline as possible. But it occurs to me now, I mean, Republicans have thought this for a long time, and they've thought it because their establishment candidates nonsensically say it all the time. It's just a matter of, I guess, for Republican primary voters and the Republican faithful, it somehow makes sense to say, well, when the other guys get money, that makes them puppets. But we also give us money, we won't be puppets. But it's an attack they make on Democrats all the time. Now the big problem is someone's making it on Republicans, and it's a Republican. They can't just dismiss it. Democrats make that attack all the time on Republicans, but they just ignore it because Democrat. Now they're stuck I have to acknowledge Trump as a Republican. He was just on television in a debate. Now it doesn't matter what happens. Whatever the truth is, it was on TV, and everyone believes it.
Right, exactly. Anyway, interesting stuff, and just to put things in perspective, and one of the things that occurs to me, and I'm noticing on Twitter occurring to a lot of people, is if Donald Trump puts out this immigration proposal, how does the rest of the GOP field react to it? Do they ignore it and thereby acquiesce? Does silence mean that they're all in on it with him? Or do they attack it and thereby attack the GOP base that believes this? This is, again, one of the reasons why Trump is such a disruptor to what the Republican establishment wants to do. It's awful for them.
Yeah, they'll have to figure out a way to deal, I guess. I don't know whether silence could be interpreted in a number of ways. Either that they are on board with the policy, or that they've been cowed into silence, or that he's just sucked up all the oxygen.
And any way you do it, it doesn't look good.
Yeah. Well, that's okay with me, in terms of them not looking good.
Yeah, it's fine with me too. But I think that's the position they wind up with.
All right.
So, and then again, Nate Silver has a new piece out. Hillary Clinton's inevitable problems. Just pointing out that nobody likes inevitable.
Right.
And anytime you have a candidate who looks inevitable, they're going to drop a little bit for this, that, or the other thing. But the betting markets are still going with her. And so his conclusion is she remains the heavy favorite to win the nomination. Clinton would rather, he writes, have stronger favorability ratings than weaker ones, no email scandals, Sanders behind her in every poll, rather than all but one of them. And if Joe Biden enters the race, maybe Clinton's chances go down a bit, but if he doesn't, Clinton's go up a bit. So it's that the challenges Clinton's campaign has faced, and the media narrative about an unexpectedly competitive race, is exactly what you'd expect relative to the historical experience of campaigns like hers. Being the heavy favorite to win the nomination doesn't mean you expect to go 162-0. That is a reference to baseball.
Okay, yes. Perfect season.
And he gives examples of others. George W. Bush's campaign, Gore's campaign. When the winner is way ahead, then you're going to have these little bumps in the campaign. It's completely expected, and it's the traditional and historical thing to do. Just to put it in perspective.
Okay.
Doesn't mean Bernie can't win, but you got to look at it in terms of what are the chances. Hillary's got a better chance than Bernie to get the nomination, and let's just leave it at that.
Well, the unfortunate downside of data journalism and tracking historical trends is it's not very exciting. It's kind of a boring piece of analysis. Things that you expect to happen generally do, but that's what the data says. So
that's what the data says, and then people will turn around and say, "Yeah, well, n = 4 or n = 2, and how do you know?" Well, the betting money says that's true, but it's still probably the way it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Making the boring prediction, it's boring. That doesn't mean anything by itself. It's boring because most people have already thought that that's likely to be the outcome, and you haven't told them anything different. But that's
right.
Unfortunately, that's the downside of doing what Nate does. The truth is, it's pretty boring when you get right down to it.
Well, yeah, it's not as exciting as going to see the butter cow.
Yeah,
so
you got to come up with exciting ways of saying it. Like there's a 60% chance that she'll XYZ.
Right. Sal Kapoor, writing in Bloomberg, has Donald Trump gives anti-immigration Republicans their dream policy. So, I wonder if Pat Buchanan was an advisor. This is an incredible policy, really, and ought to be taken seriously, and the rest of the Republican Party ought to take it seriously. And I think it's a big deal.
Incredible, like in the...
I can't believe you were so stupid as to do this because it's going to really hurt you in the general.
Well, very likely true. I don't know.
Oh, but he'll get 45%. You see, everybody agrees with... Well, everybody doesn't agree with him, but there's a hardcore group that does. Now, is Trump going to be the nominee? Still can't believe it myself, personally, because I think that his 25% means 75% don't like him. And if there's one candidate, then the other guy gets 75 and he gets 25.
Yeah, well, they just got to coalesce around that one. Whoops, that's troublesome. But then again, that's what this process is supposed to do.
Right.
So, I don't know. I guess to the extent you trust the process, You're just going to have to wait. And, I mean, this is one of the huge downside to having 2-year-long campaigns for president.
Yeah, as far as
a year waiting.
Let me summarize with this, and I'm going to tweet this to you so you could see it, because it's just beyond words. Right. But for those of you listening at home on radio and download and podcast streams, it's a simple GIF of a dancing Godzilla. And, you know...
That's never simple.
Well, that's how I feel about how the Republican campaign is going so far.
A dancing Godzilla. All right.
You know, he's having fun, and so am
I. Okay. So let's. So you gonna tweet this out later on, or are you going to send that to everybody?
I just tweeted it to you now, but
okay.
On Twitter.
See it.
Look at my. Oh, you don't. Okay. Well,
why not?
Why? I don't know. Are you following me?
Yeah, I sure hope so. My goodness. Although, you know, with this tweet deck, I have no idea. I'm supposed to be. I always do, but you know, it kind of randomly decides things like that. It also depends which computer I look at it on. I don't know. I'll go search for it directly. What's happening here?
I'll try and do it.
All right, there it is. Okay.
See it?
Well, I got the link to the picture. I got to open up. Now TweetDeck doesn't want to show me the pictures. All right, there it is. Okay.
All right, dancing Godzilla.
Dancing. Oh, very nice. With some
Very
Japanese lettering. He's got a bag in his hand.
Yeah, it looks like he's gone shopping, and he's just like time. And so, you know, that's how I feel about it.
Well,
he's not destroying anything. He's just dancing.
Yeah, and looks like he's being pretty careful not to destroy things. It's a happy Godzilla.
Absolutely. Happy Godzilla.
Okay.
So, with that, that's my summary for this morning. Thanks so much for listening. This is Greg Dworkin, starting off the week with David Waldman, Kagro in the Morning. That's his show, Kagro in the Morning, and he would be Kagro. So thanks for listening, folks, and if you're listening live in the Washington, D.C. area, We Act Radio, or whether you're doing download or podcast, we do appreciate it. We thank the Netroots Radio folks for making it all happen. And we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see what the Republican Party has done to themselves between now and then.
Yep. We will, and we'll catch up on Donald Trump, too, who I see now reporting for jury duty in New York City. Wow.
Yep.
Sounds exciting.
Yep.
Better than the butter cow.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. I'll
Thanks,
see you.
Greg. Okay. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Let's catch up with the other thing. Speaking of dancing in costume, here's something I discovered over the weekend. Not only did I go and play a bunch of that golf game where you run around after the ball in the grass, we played it on the eastern shore of the Delmarva Peninsula. That is to say, largely in the where were we? We were in the Ocean City, Maryland area. Largely, I think is where we centered the golfing around. But we stayed in Bethany Beach, Delaware, so that was nice. Here's what we discovered in Ocean City. Another thing that will make you say, why do I get up out of bed and work? A guy, maybe a woman, I don't know, because they were in costume. I couldn't tell. I think went to a costume shop and rented a costume because it was an elaborate, mascot-style full-body costume. Dressed up as a minion from the, is it Pixar? Disney, the Minions? I don't know. They've got the movie out now, very popular among the kids. Kids are going to love the Minion thing. Just put on a Minion suit, right? Go out on the boardwalk and stand around. And they put a tip jar out, labeled, bucket with a lid that had a hole cut in it, a slot cut in it, and said tips on it. And you stand there and wave to people as they pass, and then offer yourself up for pictures. All the kids want to have their pictures with a Minion. And lots of adults want to have their picture, ironically, I guess, taken with a Minion. And so they did it, and everybody understands that the privilege of taking a picture is, literally speaking, is free with the, you brought your own camera, and you can take a picture of whatever you want. That guy wants to stand there, that's fine. I guess he could be a jerk and turn around if you don't tip him, but it's generally understood that you put $1 in the jar, and then you get your picture. And the Minion will act friendly to you for $1 or some other amount of money. But we stood there, I guess, we stopped and got some ice cream or something. And in the time it took us to stop, sit, eat the ice cream, this guy made, I don't know, $50, $100 standing there in a Minion suit, which he didn't invent the Minions. He didn't illustrate the Minions. He didn't make the suit probably either. I don't know what it costs to go and rent a suit like that for a day. When I was talking about it while we were sitting on the boardwalk, I figured, rent this Minion suit for $20 and then you make $100 in a half an hour standing around taking pictures. But it probably costs $100 to rent the suit. So maybe the margins are a little less enticing. Otherwise, I guess we would be chock full of Minions standing around everywhere with tip buckets. But it didn't make me want to get up in the morning and work hard on things. If I could just stand there in a Minion suit. Although, could be hot. But it was nighttime, so how hot could it be inside there? And it might be worth the money. Again, if it was really paying big money, you'd see Donald Trump doing it. And he's not. Instead, he's going to jury duty. I did hear something about this over the weekend becoming a possibility. I doubt he'll serve on a jury, but you can't not go once word gets out that you've been called for jury duty. Then you are you're a jerk if you use your influence to not go. So here's TPM's write-up of it, if there's a write-up. There's a photo of him going. People are asking for autographs wherever he goes. Similar situation here, and he's being mobbed, although a good portion of the people mobbing him are press folks. This TPM here, I guess, just running an AP story, not an original piece. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is taking a break from courting voters to go to court as a potential juror. Trump shook hands and fist-bumped bystanders, not terrorist fist jab, mind you, but fist-bumped by. That's interesting thing. I know we've had a long time to absorb what that is and figure it out. And I know also we're talking about AP, where people know perhaps, well, I recognize this cultural interaction as a fist bump. And it's not Fox News where they claimed not to know what it was at the time. And I guess 8 years ago, I was going to say you could plausibly claim that most people didn't know, but that's a lie. Everybody knew what it was. And you saw it in sports all the time. It was ridiculous and stupid to pretend that they didn't know what it was. But there you have it. That's, I guess, the difference between white candidate and black candidate, Republican candidate and Democratic candidate, Donald Trump candidate and anybody else candidate. I really don't know exactly what it is, but there you go. 8 years later, 7 years later, everybody knows it's a fist bump, not a terrorist fist jab. How interesting. I'd love to have the video of that too now, and you put those two things side by side along with the headlines. So he shook hands and fist bumped. That, by the way, so even shaking hands, why don't we pretend, oh my goodness, I've never seen that before. Is that a terrorist hand waving gesture of some kind? Is he passing, is that like symbolic of passing a bomb vest detonator from one terrorist to another? I don't know. So he fist bumped and shook hands as he reported for jury duty Monday at a Manhattan court. He arrived in a limousine, as most potential jurors do, and walked up the courthouse steps, as most potential jurors do. Not true, obviously. Most potential jurors probably either arrive, if anything, if they arrive by car at all, it would be by taxi, perhaps by Uber, mostly out of the subway or otherwise walking. Limousine, probably not often done. The GOP frontrunner, hilarious that you have to call him that, said last week he was looking forward to appearing. Well, that's always true. Why didn't he try to phone in his jury service? That would have been interesting. Apparently everyone else lets him phone things in too, as noted in the past. And I actually have an article about that somewhere too. The real estate mogul and reality TV star has been called previously, but didn't appear. A spokesman said Trump never got the summonses because they had been sent to the wrong address. I doubt very much. Well, you know, he has a lot of addresses. That's probably true. But I doubt very much whether in the past, had he gotten the summonses, that he would have gone. He almost assuredly has someone ask to exempt him from it based on probably on celebrity status. And he probably would have done that again, except that he's running for president and somebody told him, no, you can't do that. Plus, also, it's a great opportunity to get out there and be photographed and see people and look like you're doing the Trump version of being a regular guy. That is, arriving in a limousine to do what most people arrive by subway to do. Anyway, but yeah, I'm not above the law. I'm a regular person. Here I go. Over the years, Many celebrities have been called for jury duty in New York City. Not surprising, they live in New York City. They include Madonna, Spike Lee, and Woody Allen. Former mayors Michael Bloomberg and Rudolph Giuliani both were called while in office. And I don't know how those turned out. The politicians probably tried to make a show of going. The celebrities, I would imagine many more celebrities get called but don't go. And maybe Madonna, Spike Lee, and Woody Allen are in the news here because they went. But I'm not really sure. But most celebrities probably try to quietly get out of it. And probably most courts accept the idea that I would rather not have the disruption, frankly. We are, after all, trying to hold court here and get some real business done. I'd rather not have the disruption of having the celebrity there and causing problems and drawing attention away from the actual proceedings. And so for that reason, ironically, you get to pull rank and not do jury duty like every other schlub in America because you're just too cool and famous. But I guess if you're running for president or running for office and it'll be seen as abusing privilege, then you gotta go. All right. Where else can we grab stories from? Michael Musson correctly points out, I have to say, there's no proof that it's not happening. For all we know, he says, you are in a minion suit right now. That it's true that you don't know. I don't do video for the show, but maybe that's one of the innovations I have to add to the show if we can raise a whole bunch of money. One of the ways I could raise a whole bunch of money is wear a minion suit and stand out there for tips. If I wore a minion suit, did the show on video, and published the video that day, but I'd only publish it if we. That's a Kickstarter right there. That's how I can move to the Kickstarter platform that more people are comfortable with. More so apparently than Recurrency.us, though I do encourage everybody to go there. By the way, I had a few more donations come in on Recurrency.us from some reluctant donors. And I think probably we should share their stories at some point, too. I know that Blue DuPage was initially reluctant only because the idea of, I think, signing up for another system and once again giving information out to somebody. But eventually those objections were overcome, and to my knowledge, no one has stolen Blue DuPage's identity to this point. So I guess that's a success story. I also would point out that I think the way Recurrency prefers to work, because they're so hooked into social media, is that they ask you to sign up and link your profile on Recurrency.us to one of your social media profiles, but you don't have to, and that's actually an important thing for a lot of people. They're fine donating and using the system, but they don't really want to hook it up to their social media identity. And so what you can do is you can enter, well, I guess you can, for public consumption, you can enter any name you want, but of course you want to be identified in some way with your donation, but you don't have to hook it up to your social media profile, so that there never has to go out a tweet saying that your social media persona is connected to this donation. You can instead give your real name or some reasonable facsimile of a real name, and we'll just thank you by name. And although it will attempt to put an @ sign in front of your name when I hit the button to tweet out that your donation has come in and to thank you, it won't actually go to your social media profile if you sign up differently. And I will just simply say thanks out to the ether in my general Twitter feed, and it won't tag you necessarily unless you ask it to. So I don't know. That was a big deal for some people. That's easily avoided as well. You can sign up any way you like on that. Plus, of course, I've always liked the idea that you could leave money in escrow for people connected to their social media profile if you discover them through social media. And my favorite examples are people who tweet fantastic stuff, and I otherwise don't know how to get in touch with them. And while I might like to support them financially, I don't know who they are, and I don't know whether they have Facebook pages, but I do know I like their Twitter accounts, and you can hook it up to that, and basically out goes a tweet at some point from Recurrency to them that says, by the way, someone's willing to support you. So I think that's a really cool thing. I've mentioned that before, and just to sum up that bit of things, in case you are, once again, thinking of supporting the show with a monthly donation, recurrency.us, not .com, but .us is the place to do it, and finding my profile is as simple as typing in either my social media identifier, in this case Twitter, the @KagroX, K-A-G-R-O-X, and find me that way. Or if you are a follower of the radio show and know only how I am introduced each morning by our disembodied Fripp voice as David Waldman, you can type that into, and hey, that is linked to my social media profile and you will find me. Type it into the search bar there, you'll find me, and then boom, there's the opportunity to join up and give them a fake name if you want to. But the private information of, okay, well, where is this money actually coming from? That part, of course, you still have to give them your real name and whatnot so that they can get the billing done right, but that's not the part that's for public consumption. Could it one day be hacked and all your information be exposed for all the world to see? Yeah, I guess so. Just the same as anything else. PayPal or ActBlue or any of the other platforms. But a lot of people just like those other platforms. I really do need to put some time into figuring out exactly how I want to use them. But maybe Kickstarter's it. Maybe I didn't think I had a product to offer, and I didn't want the product to be additional shows or show times because I still, as silly as it is, I mean, it would probably be more lucrative at some point once you build up enough of an audience to simply say, well, we'll just charge for the show. But it's not really where I want to be, and I don't like the idea. And at this point, we don't have anything near, I don't think, the audience where you can demand that of them. But so I started to think about what kind of products could I do. But maybe dressing up in a minion suit and doing the show is exactly the kind of thing that's needed, right? There are probably other alternative versions of that as well. And if you can think of one, by all means, tweet it to us. Use the hashtag KITM. It seems to be pretty much an open channel. Still works for us. Sometimes we share the hashtag with people we don't know what the hell they're doing. But it still comes to my computer. So that'll do just fine. All right. Let's see. What else can we catch up on here? Story-wise. I mentioned that Donald Trump did a thing. What was the thing we wanted to talk about? Let's see. Open up Pocket here. Oh, yes. Right. Remember when he was phoning in all his appearances on TV shows? I understand he did a bunch more Sunday shows. Is that correct? As you know, I always miss the Sunday shows intentionally. But maybe we'll see whether there's any story there. But there was a time when others were noting, anyway, that Trump was doing a lot of his television appearances on the phone, which is a little bit weird and a very different method and not something that they make available to anyone. But I guess even before he was a presidential candidate, television stations were pretty sure that they did not want to forego the obvious ratings gold that went along with having Donald Trump on their air. And if he was only going to do it by phone, they were going to take it. Here we go. Here's the story from, look at that, from Amber Phillips. Is that right? Yeah, Amber Phillips, whose piece we read the other day about, what was it? It was the, why can't I bring it to mind now? Yes. Well, I'll discuss it later on. But the take on one of the Black Lives Matter issues, as I recall. All right. Well, let me jump to this. Oh, is this in the fix? Was the other piece by her in the fix as well? I didn't notice that she was connected to the fix. Yeah, remember it was the white kid, essentially, who had gotten shot by the cops, and the family and the lawyer's family were both asking, where's the outrage? And originally I certainly thought that the lawyer and the family were asking that in terms of, well, how come there's no outrage? Is it only because he's white? Where then by the end of the article, I got the sense that perhaps Amber Phillips was not necessarily talking about the hypocrisy of Black Lives Matter people not speaking out for this person because he was white, but rather was sort of winking, hey, maybe the hypocrisy is on the side of the All Lives Matter types who shout back at Black Lives Matter and say, well, if all lives matter, this should be your natural rallying point, and yet you're doing nothing. Very clever move, I thought. Very subtle from Amber Phillips. I think that's who we had read about that, but I think I've since ditched that article from Pocket since we read it. But this one appears under the Fix banner here. You know what? I better click over to Amber Phillips and make sure that we're talking about the same person. I don't know whether I should just leave it like that if it's not her. And let's see, if you click on her name, it'll show me the latest articles that she had written. And if I can scroll down and see that if the earlier article, although that's pretty old, see, I don't know if I might have to scroll way back to make sure that's it. Anyway, I guess I could leave that as a background job for others to do the checking. Okay, never mind. But I think we're pretty much correct there. Anyway, I should get instead to the story itself. Dang, and now having scrolled all over the place, here it is. Why the news networks let Donald Trump phone it in, literally. So let's take a look at the literal story here. Up at the top, of course, a note in italics that the Post has been updated with more Donald Trump media appearances and a statement from Fox News' Roger Ailes. Now, this goes back to August 10th, so it's not super duper fresh news, but it's not old. More than passing budgets, more than giving speeches, and more than trading political barbs, the mysterious universe that is Washington, D.C. is governed by one universal truth. Getting your face on TV is a sign of success and importance. Generally, that is the case, right? Donald Trump, the current GOP frontrunner in the presidential race, is as conscious of this metric as anyone. The man loves the spotlight. But over the weekend, I guess last weekend, when Trump's spotlight shone the brightest, or perhaps more precisely the harshest, he was nowhere to be seen, physically at least. By the way, now that he is physically all over the place, the unstated, as yet in this article, unstated subtext, it actually goes on to state it right away. The harshest spotlight came over the so-called feud with Megyn Kelly at the debate. By the way, has enough time passed now where we can say, yeah, he survived that. He actually came out fine, and Megyn Kelly ends up looking like the loser in this one because she didn't lose a great deal of ground. There was nothing for her to lose. It's just she tried to make it look like this could be the career-ending thing for Trump, and it isn't. And now nobody's talking about Megyn Kelly again. And plus, I understand she was forced, perhaps, to take a vacation of some sort, an unplanned vacation. That's what I heard. I don't know whether I have seen any articles about it, but that would pretty much be the icing on the cake there, right? If the two of them bump heads and he goes to the Iowa State Fair and is appearing all over the place and is on the Sunday shows and she's on forced vacation, I think you know who the winner, if there is such a term, if that's the right term for it. The winner there is Donald Trump. Okay. So over the weekend, when Trump's spotlight shone the brightest, or perhaps the harshest, he was nowhere to be seen, physically at least. Instead, he phoned into 4 Sunday political talk shows to discuss his feud with Fox News host Megyn Kelly and elaborate on his inter-party battle with conservative blogger Eric Erickson. And I think it was during these appearances that he either said or tweeted or whatever the whole thing about Megyn Kelly and had blood coming out of whatever, and depending on how you chose to read that, outrage again, and yet here it is a week later, he's posing with the butter cow, and she's nowhere to be seen. More media appearances continued by phone this week, the story says. On Monday, last Monday, he called into the Today Show and MSNBC's Morning Joe. On Tuesday, he called into Fox News' Fox and Friends, proof that that one's over, to chat with host Steve Doocy, potentially signaling détente between Trump and Fox. Ahead of Trump's appearance on Fox and Friends, Fox News chair and CEO Roger Ailes released a statement confirming he spoke with Trump by phone, again, on Monday, saying Ailes stood by Megyn Kelly and assured Trump, quote, that we will continue to cover this campaign with fairness and balance. We had a blunt but cordial conversation, and the air has been cleared. With the air cleared, Trump will appear in person Tuesday evening on Fox News' Hannity with Sean Hannity. But it's rare that Trump actually appears on camera, and he's been calling into TV shows for years, especially on Fox and Friends. That definitely needs to be noted. It's been happening for a long time, and it happens for its own reasons. It wasn't so much that he's not either afraid to be on camera, he's not. I think it's just a rich guy living a happily rich lifestyle, and he's like, why the hell should I go all the way over there? Honestly, to be perfectly honest, if I were a pundit, I would feel the same way. Why the hell should I go all the way over to the studio if they want what I have to say and they want to hear my knowledge of the situation? I can do that by phone. I don't need to be on camera. That's a concession to the television production game. Television producers say, I want a body in studio, dressed in a suit, sitting at our seat. That's what I want. And now if you have to be glad that a studio or a television station called you and pretend that you thrive on their giving you that opportunity, then you have to give in and go. If you're Donald Trump and you don't depend at all on anyone because you've got $10 billion, or claim to anyway, and you don't depend on television stations for publicity, you kind of do. There's still a symbiotic relationship there, but if you are Donald Trump, pretty much anywhere you go, like you show up for jury duty, you're going to get cameras. And there's going to be people taking your picture and having video cameras rolling. And if you say something outrageous, it's going to be on TV. It's not the same relationship. So, what is a rich person who's not interested in career development per se, the same way that a pundit is? How does a rich person who's enjoying a morning muffin or croissant and some fresh squeezed orange juice in a penthouse at the Trump Tower, no doubt wearing a silk robe and little else, just to give you a nice morning picture to have in your head. Sorry about that. By the way, you want me to stop doing that? Recurrency.us. You can sign up and pay me never to talk to you about Donald Trump naked in a silk robe. I didn't say naked before, but now I did. In a silk robe, enjoying his breakfast. Why the hell should he get dressed? Why put on the monkey suit? I know he loves to put that on all the time anyway. That's the way he normally dresses. But why do it? Why bother? Why rush yourself? They want me. I don't want them. So I'll phone it in. I mean, that's the basics of what's going on here. I was very curious when I put the article aside to see whether there was any deeper analysis about that. I don't know how much stock I'd put in a deeper analysis of it. He does what he does. I want to express my views on this thing. I'm going to pick up the phone and express my views. If they're going to say they're not going to put me on the air, screw them. What do I care? I'll give the exclusive to NBC, to ABC, to see somebody's going to put me on the air. All right. So where we left off was, as far as the TV news business goes, all this calling is pretty unusual, which raises a couple of questions. One, why would Trump phone in when he was in New York City over the weekend and could have pretty easily gotten to a camera? And two, why would the networks let Trump call in by phone when TV shows exist specifically to, show people on camera? Now, it goes on to say, we can't answer the first one, though we can point out Trump had a lot of media hits over the weekend, including an interview with the Washington Post. Perhaps it's just easier. No doubt about it, it's absolutely easier. And to put things off on a brief tangent, one of the things I've said very often, both on the show, on Twitter, in writing, elsewhere, being a television pundit or TV news personality is a lifestyle choice and a lifestyle issue. One of the reasons you see the same people over and over and over and over on television, whether they're mainstream pundits or even you see the same sort of alternative or even net roots-based pundits, who make their way into the business, whether through MSNBC or any of the other cable channels, and become semi-regular available television guests. those people are the same ones over and over too, for a very specific reason. Most of this stuff is, the shorthand for it is television production people and those who have a hand in this sort of booking are lazy, but they're not lazy. They're actually extraordinarily hardworking. They're very, very busy, and they have a lot to do, and so they want to make what they do as easy as possible. It's not that they're lazy, it's that they just don't want to reinvent the wheel every time. If you were a television producer and you were really super dedicated to the idea that you were going to have a fresh face on every issue, it wouldn't work. One, because it would be incredibly difficult to get someone new every time, or even if it was, I'm not going to have the same person on more than 3 times, whatever, some arbitrary rule. Secondly, it doesn't work for the medium because believe it or not, part of what makes punditry work, and that's the part you're not likely to believe, that punditry works, but part of what makes punditry work as a magic show, as an illusion show for you, is the idea that the viewers will, in fact, at some point get used to seeing the same people. If you are a repeat player in the game, there is an inherent, if unwarranted, amount of trust that the viewers hand over to you. If you literally bring a new pundit in, even if they're all equally brilliant and all equally insightful, which is to say they've got nothing, and you bring in one person after another, you want to see the same person come back, because if they were right or sounded right and experience bears them out, you want to see what they're going to say about the next thing, and there's a certain amount of trust you put in them. And if you change people every time, although you would get the most fresh perspective, and for a long time we've all said, well, what you really need is wider opinion collection, fresh perspective all the time from all over the place. Somehow it just doesn't work. People say, this is just too scattered. Even though if you have the same person on over and over again, we also know from experience that there's no kind of accountability of any sort in the pundit game. And having the same person on over and over again and making them a repeat player doesn't actually result in any of that. It just feels like it results in all of that, which is, I guess, a sort of a metaphor for the fact that when they do ask you to show up, they will insist, and or you, if you know what's good for you in a career development sense, will show up in a suit and tie if you're male, or in similar business attire if you are female, and show up and do it, even though, once again, what you're being asked for is your opinion and your ability to discuss this thing, and you can discuss it just as easily in pajamas or silk robes or nothing at all as you could in the business suit. But the point is that you're putting on a show here. You're supposed to look like a trustworthy fellow or a trustworthy woman, and that means you dress this way. Trustworthy people dress this way. It's a very subtle messaging, but it's also very in-your-face kind of messaging, I guess. And if you show up and you don't have one of those business suits on, then people know right away, somehow, subliminally, not to take you seriously. And the job is to create a program that people are going to take seriously, even if you say very unserious things, like, this war will be over in 2 weeks. If you say that in no shirt and overalls, people, and sling blade style, people say, wow, does that guy know anything? This war could be going on forever. But say it in a suit and tie and whatever, Brill cream, I don't know, whatever stupid thing makes you look respectable. Back in the day, people say, it really might be a 2-week war. I don't know what that is exactly. Michael Musson, additionally, pointing out, good callback here. For all we know, Trump calls into these shows wearing a minion suit. That could absolutely be the case. But they want to have you there. Now, Trump gets to call in for a couple of reasons. One, he just says, to hell with you. You want me to be on your air, you'll let me do it the way I want to do it. And two, if you are told Donald Trump is on the phone, and you hear the unmistakable Donald Trump voice, and better still, the unmistakable Donald Trump utterances, you know what's going on. And you can picture it in your mind, and you can see Donald Trump. And by the way, when you picture Donald Trump in your mind, go ahead, tweet me at KITM, use the hashtag KITM, what's he wearing? Now, don't get, too crazy here, but chances are, if you're honest, he's wearing, of course, his regular business suit. And if you're really picturing him some other way, and there's some comedic value to it, go ahead and let me know. I'll share it with the audience. But chances are you picture him in the business suit. And even better, of course, television producers know there has to be a visual element anyway, so they'll pull up a file photo of Donald Trump, and then they'll put that on the phone, Donald Trump, right up there on the screen. And, whether they have him or not, they're going to put together a visual for you. And if they can't get to it because it's a surprise and they're not ready with the art card of Donald Trump on the phone, they'll just tell you Donald Trump is on the phone, and you can picture it, and you'll see it just the way you're supposed to see it in the pundit game. Not always the case with other pundits. There are some, I'm sure, that you are going to be very, very familiar with, and you could picture very easily without having them in studio, but most are just not that familiar to us. And if you don't have the face there, then you got an incomplete picture. Occasionally, who else gets to call in to television news shows? People who aren't immediately able to get to a studio, who are on the ground at a breaking news story, or who have some unique perspective on some breaking news story that broke in the hinterlands somewhere, and they can't get them to a studio to sit down and talk, or whatever. But occasionally, if you're the only person in the world, or one of the very few who have something to say on this news, they will patch you in through the phone. On the phone now live, someone who just saw the active shooter at XYZ movie theater. Things like that. Otherwise, Donald Trump gets to go and do things his way because you don't want me on the air, fine. I don't care. I'll take it to somebody else. And two, you can create the visual picture you need to complete this whole illusion. As for the second, going back to the article, the second question, that is, why would the networks let Trump call in when the whole point of a television show is to put people on camera? As for the second, the answer appears to basically boil down to this, says Amber Phillips of the Washington Post, because Trump is Trump. He's the political newsmaker of the moment, bar none, and as such, he gets to set the terms of how he'll make news. But he was always able to do it, even when he wasn't the political newsmaker of the moment, wasn't the candidate for anything at all. But even then, Trump was Trump. Famous name, helps to have a famous name on the air. You don't really need to have him in studio in order to have a mental picture of what's going on. Producers inherently know this, and they'll put him on and just say, Donald Trump's on the phone. A network source, Phillips continues, involved in setting up one of Trump's Sunday media appearances, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss the matter candidly, said the network would prefer to have Trump on camera, but if the only way to get him is by phone, then that would simply have to do. Better to have the news in a less than desired format than to not have the news at all. Very true. And if Trump is the only one who can deliver Trump, then you have to do it. Whereas, same producer would absolutely, no doubt in my mind, tell you that if the question is, hey, what about this Iran deal? And you call your favorite pundit, and again, it's the same people and over because, like I said, not that they're lazy, it's just that they like to simplify the hard work that they do. That means going to the Rolodex, or perhaps these days to your smartphone, where perhaps you keep all that information, and going to the people you call all the time and who rarely, if ever, disappoint you with their willingness to get dressed, put on that suit, and get their own butts down to your studio and do things your way. And if you call your favorite person and ask somebody to do that, and they don't, then you simply say, I will just ask someone else about the Iran deal. But you can't ask anyone else to come on and pretend they're Trump. I mean, you could. I would do it for you, but it wouldn't work in your mind. I'm telling you it would work fantastic. But you think differently as the producer. And if you can't get Trump, then you offer him the phone option, or he asks for the phone option and you give it to him. You can't get another Trump. You could get a pundit to discuss Trump, but even Trump on the phone on Trump is better than a pundit live in studio on Trump. But if the subject isn't Trump or something to do with Trump, then you just go get a different person in the Rolodex. And P.S., once you make it difficult on a person who calls you to come in, you're either out of the Rolodex or, there's just a mental note there. Like, last time I called this person, they disappointed me. I'm just going to move on to something. Not my favorite person anymore. And I said that there was a lifestyle thing. Yeah, what I mean is you got to live the lifestyle of living in a major city, preferably East Coast, and within easy striking distance of one of the studios from which they can at the very least connect you by satellite, if not get to the actual production studio of the show that's on. Good Morning America, Face the Nation, whatever it is. If you can get there within X number of minutes and be dressed and ready to go and be willing to talk about whatever they hand you, that's a person who'll get called again. And even if you're doing something what would seemingly be honest, I can come in, I could absolutely do this shot, but I just am not an Iran expert. They will take you at your word and say, okay, cool, no problem. We'll call you for another thing. I know that's not your deal. And then click and then get on the phone with somebody else. And the next person who says, I'll do it, period, goes, whether they're an Iran expert or not. And so part of the lifestyle is you got to live nearby. You got to make yourself available to them. You can't live in a nice suburb nearby and make it to the studio as fast as somebody who lives either in the city or close in. So one, it's a very self-selecting thing geographically. You're not going to get diverse opinion geographically, unless, of course, you count culling the punditry from a certain class of people all across the country who are willing to move to New York City, Washington, D.C., etc., to be pundits. Two, you got to live close enough. And you can live in some of the suburbs in D.C., but it's got to be super close in. Three, it helps to have a great deal of money because, of course, to live in D.C. or in the close-in suburbs requires a great deal of money. Same thing with New York City. And even better if you have a car service of your own and can get your own butt to the studio. You have to be a really important person to the producers in order for them to consistently be willing to offer you rides to get to. And there are such places. And you don't have to be super important to get it once or twice. I've actually once or twice enjoyed having a ride into a studio like that. And I live way out. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. But when it was cheap to send a car for people, they were willing to do it even for nobodies like me. But generally speaking, you got to have the full wardrobe of business attire. You got to be real close in. You got to be able to get there within a few minutes. You got to be able to talk about whatever the hell they ask you to talk about and be willing to forego the natural inclination to say, I really don't know very much about this one. You just got to fake it. And they know you're faking it. No point in playing around there. That's okay. They just want somebody to sound and look intelligent during a specific period of airtime. And if it's the greatest appearance ever, nobody cares. But you got to also be willing to drop everything and go do this stuff. And sometimes it's, the morning shows during the weekday, you got to be in the studio at 6:30, whatever, to do a 7 o'clock shot. You're only going to be on for 2 minutes. You can't be the primary one responsible for getting the kids to school because they'll miss school while you go and do your punditry thing. So that's the lifestyle we're talking about. You got to have, if you have kids at all, you got to have a household partner who's able to drop whatever they're doing and take care of the kids and dispatching them and make sure everything is going well while you go punditize for a minute and a half in the morning. And if it's a weekend thing, you got to have a household partner who's willing to say, yeah, to hell with seeing you for the weekend. I'll take care of the kids again. It's all about you being available for the punditry game. And if the first time you say, I can't, it's my kid's birthday, or I just want to stay home, or I don't know anything about that subject, you're off the heavy rotation. And that's the way you make your living. Not necessarily paid appearances on television so much as using the appearances on television to build your creds elsewhere where you can leverage money out, whether that's getting your work published in magazines and newspapers or doing speaking engagements around the country. Generally speaking, not much in the way. They compensate a few regular panelists, who have contracts with Sunday shows to show up every time to be on that permanent panel or whatever. But otherwise, no. I don't think there's much in the way, if anything, of appearance money for spending 5 minutes for a guest punditry shot somewhere. It's just a matter of if you do enough punditry. Let's take the example of Sally Cohn, for instance, who's done a fantastic job with all this stuff. I don't think there's money for her to show up and spar for 5 minutes with a conservative counterpart on the, Rachel Maddow show, although maybe there's a contract there. But if there isn't, there should be. You should absolutely give her money. Why not? I'm forgiving Sally Cohn money for all that she does. But that makes her famous. And now her byline and photo alongside a published piece somewhere is worth more money to the publisher. And that's how you make more money in the punditry game. In order to do it, you can't have a bunch of kids who are depending on you to get them to Little League all the time or to school or to make breakfast because you got to drop your whatever you're doing and go punditize. That's basically it. All right. I think that probably concludes the how did Donald Trump get to do all this stuff on the phone section. I'll catch up with comments here. Rebecca Roman says that she sees Trump in a rubber geek suit. His wife has to take the ball out of his mouth so he can speak. And face palms then says, I mean the gimp suit. No, I should have gone with that comment first so I could have avoided the embarrassment for you there, Rebecca. But no problem. You should not be embarrassed that you did not have on the tip of your tongue the proper terminology for that particular type of, latex-clad sex slave. That you had to dig for it is the sign of probably a fairly healthy mind. So we'll give it to you that way. Can't keep my kinks straight, she says. Okay. So you picture Donald Trump any way you like. Whatever entertains you is fine by me. All right, let's jump back into Pocket and see what else I have put away. Yes. Why not go this direction for the rest of the show? Let's talk about this complete change. Let's talk about spying for a second. This one managed to sneak through during the Gulf, and I'll discuss it here. Let's turn first to Think Progress. We're going to do this in reverse chronological order, I think, and read backwards on spying stuff in terms of when the articles appear. Think Progress notes Tara Culp Wrestler, writing for them, not wrestler, W-R-E-S-T, and she's not a wrestler, it's R-E-S-S-L-E-R. Culp Wrestler. Thanks, Tara. Sorry about that. AT&T, who powers my iPhone, which I call my spy phone, quite specifically because I've kind of actually known this for years or intuited this for years. And you know how when you send email over your iPhone, sent from my iPhone, mine says sent from my spy phone, S-P-I, spy phone. I'm very clever. Everybody should know that. AT&T partnered with the NSA to help spy on billions of emails. Of course they did. They've been granted retroactive immunity for all their activities since way back in 2007, and the reason it was retroactive, of course, in 2007 is because they had been doing it for years beforehand. Yes, we keep coming back to the same theme when we talk about surveillance, privacy, online activity, et cetera, and third-party arrangements that help the government avoid constitutional prohibitions against their collecting surveillance materials against Americans. Instead of having the government collect them, they simply have the corporations collect them and hand them over either in exchange for breaks on regulatory matters or under threat that they'll get prosecuted for something, like maybe antitrust is a good vehicle. And all of a sudden you find a lot of cooperation going on, and basically you end up with exactly the situation that you thought the Constitution was there to prohibit, the government in possession of all of your electronic communications. So what does Think Progress have to say about this one? AT&T, the nation's second largest cell phone carrier, has a long relationship with the National Security, well, it says association, but we know it means administration. Or National Security Agency, really, is NSA, right? I don't know how that error got made, but who cares? Anyway, the NSA, that allows the spy agency, there it is, agency, how hard is that, to carefully monitor huge amounts of internet traffic, according to a new round of documents leaked by whistleblower and former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. I feel like we've seen this before, but maybe we haven't seen it specifically from Snowden. The documents, which Snowden provided to reporters at the New York Times and ProPublica, detail a, quote, highly collaborative, unquote, relationship between the NSA and the telecom company. More so than other telecom companies? I don't know. It certainly appears to be the case according to this article, but it may be just we haven't gotten the documents that say that Verizon does it too just yet. Or maybe that was the last set of documents and I've already forgotten. According to the Times and ProPublica, AT&T's cooperation with the agency has given NSA officials access to billions of emails and has aided the execution of the Bush administration's warrantless wiretapping programs. Remember, those are the ones that we should have impeached George W. Bush for, but we didn't. So now Jeb Bush says, I'll do it again. Same on torture. It's also facilitated the monitoring of communications at the United Nations headquarters since the UN is an AT&T customer. Terrific. The fact that large cell phone companies like AT&T and Verizon are helping, see, I guess we did have some other documents, the NSA monitor their customers' phone calls has previously been reported. Links to Forbes from September 2013 in this case. Because AT&T operates such a large portion of the country's internet and cell phone accounts, it's no secret that the company is a particularly important source of information for the NSA. And, of course, AT&T was at one point the exclusive provider of iPhone service, and that's how I ended up getting it. And although you can now move your service anywhere, pretty much, on an iPhone, probably like me, much of the world operates largely on inertia and is still AT&T customers. I always disliked AT&T and its cozy relationship over it, but I like my iPhone better. And literally, I'm just not sharing state secrets or anything even threatening the state over my iPhone or anywhere else for that matter. I'm one of those people who feels like, because he's an honest person and believes that other people are honest too, that he has nothing to hide. It will all change one day when someone misinterprets something, and then I will look back and say, I could see how you would think all of this was incriminating. Gosh, I wish you had never collected it, and it's too late now. I freely admit that I will fall into this trap one day, or certainly could fall into this trap one day. I should be more jealously guarding my privacy on principle, but not just on principle, so that I don't fall into this trap one day. It's a very wise strategic move. I just do not have time for it, and I am crossing my fingers and hoping against hope that no tragedy befalls me on that front. Also, as much as I disliked AT&T, I wasn't particularly thrilled with Verizon either, who had been my carrier before switching over to the iPhone, which I should never have switched over to anyway because child labor, et cetera, and conflict minerals. I'm a terrible progressive when it comes to stuff like that. I'm as gimmitarian as it gets, I guess. What a horrible discovery for a Monday morning. All right, but you're all guilty too, so there you go. We can all commiserate. There are certain sacrifices we just won't make because convenience, modernity. Well, the fact that a large cell phone company like AT&T and Verizon, so there was no relief going back to Verizon anyway, are helping the NSA has been previously reported, et cetera, et cetera. But because AT&T operates so many accounts because of inertia, people still have their iPhone accounts there. That's what makes this such a big deal. The reporters who combed through the new documents from Snowden write that the agency's relationship with AT&T, quote, has been considered unique and especially productive, unquote. So interesting that they would think of it as unique. The documents show that AT&T officials have been handing over information about phone calls and emails for more than a decade, including, quote, massive amounts of data that other companies like Verizon initially did not provide. But I guess that's meant to imply that they now do, like foreign communication that falls outside the purview of domestic wiretapping laws. It was also the first company to help the NSA create a new way to collect metadata that helped the spy agency see who was getting in contact with each other. The activity stretches back years. Immediately after the September 11th terrorist attacks, the internal documents show that AT&T handed over 1.1 billion customer calling records per day to the NSA officials. It's unclear if the partnership between the two continues to operate this way today. Since Snowden first began releasing documents in 2013, the NSA has faced heightened scrutiny and some legislative pushes to rein in its surveillance powers. Earlier this year, the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ruled that the NSA's sprawling database of U.S. phone calls is not authorized by federal law. Very true, but that does not, by itself, mean that they're not doing it anymore. And that's another discussion for another day. But so long as there exists out there the possibility that another administration, if you don't want to believe that this administration is doing it, that another administration, successive administration, will simply say, we're going back to the John Yoo version of things. The president can do it if he orders it or gives his assent to it. And the only thing that matters is why the president feels like they would need to do that. And Jeb Bush has pretty much promised us that he intends to take both surveillance and torture right back to where his brother W left them off. Once again, just proving that all a Democratic administration to date has been able to do or been willing to do on these fronts is hold the worst stuff, the things that they think are the worst stuff, in abeyance until a Republican can take over again and bring things right back where they started. So I had some other spying information out there too, which I thought was interesting and worth probing a little bit. Let's see, where did I put this one away? Because there was additional surveillance information that came to light that appeared to say that the national security apparatus, the intelligence community, was also already monitoring the activities online of Black Lives Matter activists as well. So, once again, not only is the government and their partners in telecommunications monitoring domestic political activity, but they've decided once again that they are going to target domestic groups that are interested in very little else besides justice and fairness for American citizens in their everyday lives as somehow either terroristic or enough of a threat that national security types have got to do this monitoring. It used to be Quaker peace activists, and probably still is, but on top of it all, it's now going to be Black Lives Matter activists as well. Now, where is the article I put aside on this? I don't know, but I know that I saw it written up, I think, by Sean King over at Daily Kos, and I should probably just go over to that one too. I thought I had done it. I thought everything was convenient and in place here. Pocket is just it's just too crowded. Too many good stories there. Let me go over then to Daily Kos and track that one down too. But I guess it should come as no surprise, really, that this was happening. That doesn't really make anybody feel better because it shouldn't be happening, and we're consistently promised that all the safeguards we need are already in place, and besides which you don't have anything to hide, so you shouldn't be worried about it. But consistently we find out, they're pretty much monitoring everyone, after all. Okay, well, where is this piece here? I'm now having difficulty finding. I'll have to search for Sean and his account here. I figured there was a pretty good chance that he would just have something on the front page and I could click on his name and go through that way. But not the case. He must have been out golfing this weekend. Do you think? I don't know. Sean Golf, I know he's got a lot of work to do as a graduate student, and he's got kids to take care of too. Let's go over to his diaries and scroll back a little bit here. Looks like we might have to pick up on this too, because he's got a little bit more, believe it or not, on the Bernie Sanders situation. But I think we've done enough in the way on Bernie Sanders today, and I don't want to stray into any more Sanders criticism now at the end of the show. Let's see. All right, we got his notes on. There's a lot here, really. Sean should provide our news feed here. We got some Bernie news we can catch up on later in the week. We've got the black-on-black crime trope being discussed here, and that's something that's worth looking into. The DOJ joining the investigation into the police shooting death of Zachary Hammond, the white kid I told you about about an hour ago, and when we were talking about Amber Phillips and whether or not she had written the piece I was thinking of. Let's see. Note that several members of the Congressional Black Caucus coming out in support of the Black Lives Matter speech interruptions, which was an interesting development as well, although a good point was made. I saw somebody say, hey, they never call white congressmen to ask about whether or not it's okay for other people to protest. Okay, that's true, but I think largely I was pleased to see that they were coming out with their defense of it, just to sort of mention to you that it's not necessarily because they were part of the elected establishment that they were going to say, no, disruptions are out of bounds. Let's see. Sean is an extraordinarily active writer, of course, so it takes a while to scroll back through all of his stuff and find the appropriate article. But now let's see, he's talking about the Oath Keepers showing up in Ferguson. Speaking of which, by the way, I should note that Kate Sherrill sent me word that I guess they were going to take up the challenge, the Oath Keepers, and were going to arm 50 black protesters in Ferguson with AR-15s. I don't know whether that's for free or whatever, for an epic rights flexing march. Well, you should open that one up, and provided there's no auto playing video involved, we can leave that one. But yeah, I guess the challenge having gone out with them claiming to be in Ferguson in support of Second Amendment rights, one wondered why they weren't, in fact, doing that as opposed to guarding Alex Jones and his outfit. So now they say they're going to hand out a bunch of AR-15s and march around with some black people. So I guess, I don't know, is that progress? Who knows? At least it means that they're subject to some sort of shaming and pressure, which I really didn't think was the case. So that's the surprising news out of that one. Here's Sean's piece from last Tuesday. And the headline is, Newly Revealed Documents Confirm. Homeland Security is monitoring / tracking leading black activists. Now, that was newly revealed documents last Tuesday. Today is, of course, the following Monday, so it's hardly even newly revealed anymore. But it's new to you because I haven't shared it on the show. Assuming that after the show is over, you turn off, unplug, shut down like C-3PO, and don't take in any news whatsoever on your own, which I really doubt is the case. So let's take a look at Sean's piece here. It's not that I'm surprised, but it's ugly nonetheless. Quite so. Newly obtained documents from Jason Leopold of Vice, who I should point out, there are probably those among you in the audience who are not super trusting of Jason Leopold every time. He, like many reporters, has been misled from time to time, but I think he's been pretty solid on a lot of this stuff from this cache of documents anyway. And anyway, the point is he's always sniffing around in the right places, and he's unearthing some pretty good stuff, and always well worth paying attention to what Jason digs up, even if he's not necessarily the favorite of some of you, I know, without naming names, have said as much. I find him personally quite nice, and I like the paths he explores, and he spends, thank God, all the time that the rest of us choose not to spend doing the correct, doing the really necessary Freedom of Information Act work that some of us just throw up our hands and say, they're probably spying on us. He's the guy that goes and gets the stuff that proves it. All right. So what are they doing? The Department of Homeland Security is not only fully monitoring the accounts of black activists and leaders, but has taken a cultural stance on who they are. That's how Sean puts it here. A lifelong educator and former head of human capital for Minnesota Public Schools, DeRay McKesson, I was not fully aware of what his background was there, by the way, has poured his heart and soul out as a leading voice nationally on the issue of police brutality and racial injustice. Quite so. And I think you all know that. He's also my friend, Sean says, and we've come to know and respect each other a great deal over the past 12 months, most of which he was working full-time in education while moonlighting as an advocate for victims across the country. By the way, another good opportunity to do that. You want to transition him from moonlighting to full-timing on something like this? Follow him on Twitter at DeRay, D-E-R-A-Y, and go over to recurrency.us and type in the search bar at DeRay, and you will discover there's his social media profile, and you can drop coin in a bucket that will, and then let him know to go look at recurrency.us, and he'll say, hey, look at that. What a surprise. 25, 30 people have agreed to put up $100 towards this thing. I should cash that out. And I should encourage people to join them in doing so. That's one of the great ways that you can use Recurrency. That's why I like it. We're not at that point. It's a new and growing service, and I should get advertising dollars for this too. All right, back to the story here. So embedded then in the rest of the story here is a document that I guess purportedly proves this must be the sort of thing that, in fact, it was Jason Leopold who found it and tweeted it out, and he sent it to DeRay on Twitter, because that's where you can find him. DeRay, a professional protester known to law enforcement, that's how they put it in quotes, whose Twitter account was monitored by the Department of Homeland Security, says the document I obtained. So what do we have here? The to and from lines here are coded out here. I guess they were sent encrypted, and so the source and recipient are name protected here. But what we're looking at is emails from May of 2015, and the email says in the shorthand here, Yeppers, like yep, watching the groups, the radio is calling out. So I figured no point in repeating, hoping the 3 p.m. brief is held. What's up over there? Okay, what's all this? Does all this say leading to what? Social media monitors have reported that a professional demonstrator / protester known to law enforcement, DeRay McKesson, has posted on his social media account that there is going to be a 3 p.m. rally at the FOP, Fraternal Order of Police, number 3 Lodge, located at 3920 Buena Vista Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland. This is early, raw, unevaluated, and uncorroborated reporting at this time, says this person, and signs off as being a part of the Department of Homeland Security. So this whole Yeppers watching the groups, blah, 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 blah. You still awake over there? This is just chatter leading up to people sharing information on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security that you guys, whoever you are, need to know that DeRay McKesson said he's going to lead a big rally or be a part of a big rally over at the Fraternal Order of Police number 3 Lodge in Baltimore. So everybody needs to go and monitor that and send bodies, probably with guns, to go and make sure that nothing gets out of hand because national security. Another tweet embedded in Sean's piece here from Jason Leopold highlights the important part, the professional protester known to law enforcement. He's not a professional protester. He's involved in education policy. But he's actually upset about something and using his First Amendment right to protest and petition the government for redress And how's the government reacting? Let's monitor him and follow him around because, after all, he's saying something. Sean continues here. A few things immediately disturbed me about this document, of course. One, Homeland Security is not yet properly monitoring police brutality and violence, but has clearly found the time, budget, and staff to monitor the social media accounts of people fighting against it. Excellent point. Our government can't even give us an honest count of how many people are killed by police annually, but this is a priority. And he puts that with a question mark. But this is a priority, but we know it is. There it is. We've seen it. Furthermore, this revelation comes just a few weeks after a document from security company ZeroFox called leaders DeRay McKesson and Johnetta Elzy serious, quote, physical threats, unquote, to public safety in Baltimore. That's some super hyperbole there, but it's the kind of thing that they love to do and can always get away with in the intelligence community. You can always say, yes, something, something, something is a threat to national security. And that definitely means physical threat. Someone might spray paint something near them. Physical threat. That's enough. 2, the other reason he's disturbed about the document, Sean says, I fundamentally reject the label of DeRay McKesson as a professional demonstrator and protester. In fact, what's particularly disconcerting about the label is that it is the exact label regularly used by ultra-conservatives to describe McKesson and so many others, and not just Black Lives Matter protesters. The professional left. You know what's funny? The actual political left loves to label the professional leftists all the time, too. I forget exactly what we were talking about the other day, but I guess when we were talking about, oh yes, right, the desirability among the more left-leaning progressives out there, and perhaps I think we were probably talking about this in the context of Bernie Sanders and his candidacy, and the idea that the Bernie Sanders supporters very often had been open, vocal for a long time about the need to hold President Obama's feet to the fire, and yet now when Bernie's feet were being held to the fire, they were upset about it. Natural, understandable, but also the sort of thing that I think most Bernie Sanders supporters could, in a relaxed environment, could take a step back and recognize when it's pointed out to them, or they could recognize it even by themselves, and they would say, not exactly sure how to deal with it. It makes me frustrated and angry that I have to deal with it, because there's so much important stuff to do, but I see your point quite so. It is true. We probably need to be more receptive to that sort of thing. But also, talking about the validity of wanting to hold President Obama's feet to the fire on a number of things, not the least of which is that a lot of this domestic surveillance and these intrusions into privacy have continued in slightly different fashion and slightly different context, but only slightly, under his administration. Absolutely something worth being disappointed and upset about, and worried that they might continue perhaps unabated under a Hillary Clinton administration, and hoping, if not necessarily believing, but in some cases both, that it would be different under a Bernie Sanders administration. I don't know whether that is the case. He would certainly express greater reservations about it and greater frustrations about it. But the intelligence community and the national security and homeland security communities have a way, let's say, of convincing even the best-meaning new Democratic and left-leaning and progressive administrations that it's entirely necessary that they continue, and somehow they keep convincing everybody that that's exactly so. I think we all have some pretty good guesses as to how that is. But it's true nonetheless. So there's definitely things to be disappointed with the Obama administration on that front. Not the least of which this particular instance, that this sort of monitoring goes on. But what are you to make of this, right? You would think that if there was, what would it take if you're imagining things and you're looking forward to a new administration supporting a candidate for president who you truly believe will change everything going forward? I mean, it's not the case that Barack Obama said he was going to come to Washington and change the way things work. So you elect a black president, And you'd figure, well, at least one of the things that'll happen is the national security apparatus, even if they feel like they have to continue to monitor terrorists, because it was always the case. I mean, President Obama was pretty clear from the very beginning that while he would insist on better and more solid legal footing for some of these things, there was no way, even if he couldn't find it, there was no way he was going to be the president that was responsible, say, for releasing dangerous people from Guantanamo. He wanted to close Guantanamo. He just wanted to put them in prison elsewhere. Wasn't going to let them go. He didn't want to be the one who was responsible for, another terrorist attack perpetrated by people who were released from Guantanamo because there was no legal basis for continuing to hold them there. He was upfront about that, and he was upfront about having to continue the war on terror, but he thought in a different way, and it was slightly different. And I'm glad that they paid more attention to legalities, but there was still a lot of fiction going on. And same thing in domestic surveillance and in a number of places. And, I mean, remember, I don't even know, now that I'm thinking back on it, the professional left label, I mean, did that not come from inside of the Obama administration? And I think everybody probably suspected it was Rahm Emanuel at the time. But the president went well out of his way and allowed his top aides in the White House early on to go well out of their way to disparage a pretty good portion of the progressive community. And it was no surprise, and this is sort of one of the games that gets played all the time, but there was a period there where it was like, blah, 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 the professional left, they're a bunch of whiners, and the president himself saying things like, I don't read Daily Kos, it rarely surprises me, et cetera. Boring, I understand that's the kind of middle-of-the-road territory you have to stake out on things, and it's not that, Daily Kos always and every time surprises everybody, but let's be honest, it's going to have its ups and downs, but the idea that it doesn't have any ups is ridiculous, and he was doing that for a sort of credibility and position and respectability game that he was looking to play, and he had very good reasons to do it. But, yeah, it's well worth reminding everybody that that's one of the reasons that people came into this election thinking that it would be great to have someone like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren running, because there was as successful as President Obama has been, and as many times as we were willing to recognize those successes and point them out, there are also bones of contention, and it's ridiculous to pretend that there aren't any. But it's also equally ridiculous, we should point out, to believe that the very next American president, no matter where they come from, is likely to be able to easily overturn decades of national security practice. Anyway, I just find that rather interesting. That was a big tangent from this, but yeah, well worth pointing out that Sean's disappointment in seeing DeRay McKesson described as a professional demonstrator / protester, it doesn't come from a right-leaning, ultra-conservative administration. It comes from not only a supposedly progressive administration, but from one with a black president. So to follow around Black Lives Matter activists, it's not that Obama is giving them the order to do that. It's that the national security apparatus has taken on and been given a life of its own that is not particularly easy to put the brakes on. It just so happens that Barack Obama is president while this is happening. Could he put his foot down on some of these things? Possibly. But, he's also in the unique position of constantly having to prove that he's not a black president. He's the president of the United States, and he takes, peace and security seriously enough that he can acknowledge a possible need to keep a very close eye on things. But, yeah, that's going to offend a lot of people. And rightly so, and it's offended Sean here, and I get it too, and it's offensive to me. I don't expect it to stop no matter what color Barack Obama is or whoever becomes president next. It's just one of those things that I think is going to be a consistent disappointment, and we're always going to find surprises no matter who the president is. The size and scope of the surprises will just be different. All right, let me continue and finish up with Sean's piece here. To see Homeland Security using the same false label as ultra-conservative commentators and progressive ones causes me to conclude that their goals are one and the same, and could possibly, dangerously, lead you to conclude that the goals of the two parties are one and the same, and that there's not a dime's worth of difference between the two of them, and oops, George W. Bush is president, and guess what? There is a dime's worth of difference between him and Barack Obama. This label is meant to demean and diminish not only McCain, but also other courageous women and men whose lives have been completely interrupted by American injustice. When people teach you what they think about you, believe them. This is our government showing us what they truly think about us. I know I'm foolish for being disappointed, but it's a mess. You're not foolish for being disappointed, but you take the pressure off yourself. I understand why you put it that way. You shouldn't be disappointed in yourself for being disappointed. You need to consistently remind yourself every once in a while that everyone will disappoint you. And on balance, if things are getting better, great. And if they're not, then you need to push. And, hey, who would have thought that in the closing years of America's first black presidential administration, you would have to be pushing on this? And yet here you are. Okay. Well, we're getting towards the end of the show here. Will be time to turn over the reins to the after show folks sometime real soon. And I will tell you all about what's coming up on the show in just a minute. Let me catch up on one or two more comments here. Kate Sherrill has sent me something. What's this? Oh, well, look at this. Caprese salad on a stick cited in Indiana at an upscale fundraiser. Okay, so it's not the state fair necessarily, but let's take a look. Looks pretty good. So I guess that's going to be a thing here. And food on a stick, not just good for state fairs, but great for past hors d'oeuvres as well. So very easy to handle. So good news. Thanks for the report there, Kate. And, another great thing here. We'll have to dive into some of the other things she's pointed us to for the rest of the week. But that's, I think, a pretty good update on what's been going on the surveillance front. We will drill down into that, no doubt. I will probably have to turn to Marcia Wheeler's writings for that. And probably, in all likelihood, Joan will want to discuss this with us in her visit on Wednesday. We're going to see whether we can put together a nice week's worth of regular and special guests to help carry the ball during the rest of the week here as I recover from my weekend away chasing the ball through the grass. Thanks very much to Greg for coming on and getting us on even keel, and to those of you participating in the show through the KITM hashtag on Twitter and sending articles our way. I think we limped through today's show reasonably well. And, we made a pretty good showing of it today. Stay tuned then for the after show coming up next on Netroots Radio. Wink and Justice will round up no doubt, a great bunch of stories today. Anything we missed, if you turned into the show today saying, doubtless David will cover this fantastic story, but then we're disappointed to find out that I was paying no attention whatsoever over the weekend, I can practically guarantee you the betting markets, as Greg would point out, are showing all sorts of activities. The bets are coming in hot and heavy that Wink and Justice will cover anything you thought I was absolutely going to get to during today's show. I'll get to them tomorrow, no doubt, but anything I miss, Wink and Justice are usually right on top of. Anyway, we're like-minded, I guess you could say, here on Netroots Radio, and that's not a bad thing. You're like-minded, too. That's why you're here. Do stay here. Stay here all damn day long, if you please. Think once again about going over to recurrency.us and making a contribution, or at the very least, force someone you know and love to start listening to the show. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
So do stay tuned for the after show coming up next. I won't have time to shove in all the fantastic stories that they're going to be talking about, but that's why you should stay tuned. I can tell you this, though. Will McLeod is on tap today for the last half, so he'll join them and wrap everything up just fantastic. Hang on, we're coming next.